Now let us turn our Bibles once again to 1 Samuel chapter 25. 1 Samuel chapter 25. Now we just read a situation, all right, where Abigail, hastens with her servants to David, who was about to go and kill all the males in Nabal's family. And, how through this, Abigail managed to stop, all right, the massacre that David was intending. So this is the storyline, all right, the account of what happened. Now, what are we to learn from this? When we are walking through life on earth, now inevitably we may be thrown into situations where we need to intervene to help. We need to intervene in some situations. Now, there are a few situations, and that is exactly what Abigail was in. Now, we can find ourselves in a situation like Abigail as well. Now, I try to, gather three, of course there may be more, possible situations where we may find ourselves in this situation as Abigail. Now, the first one, look at verse 17. Now the servant said to Abigail, all right, chapter 25, verse 17. Now therefore know and consider what thou wilt do. Know and consider what you will do. Sometimes we are called upon to help. Sometimes you are called upon to aid in a situation. You're called upon. Like Abigail, the servant said, I brought this information to you for a reason. Because, look at verse 17. Now, Abigail, you know, just like we know, our master, verse 17, our master, for he is such a son of Belial that a man cannot speak with him. She was called upon because she was the only person that can do anything now, right? We can't reason with your husband. Now you have to do something. You think about this. You have to do something. Call upon. Because you can do something. You're in a good position to do something. So sometimes in life we are faced with that. You are in that position and you must help. You must intervene. Then, look at 17b. All right? Then he says, 17, the second part. For evil is determined against our master and against all his household. You do not have a choice at times. Not only you're called upon, she was called upon because she's probably the best person in this situation, but she does not have a choice as well. She has to intervene because her own household, her own husband's life are all at risk. So sometimes we find ourselves in that situation too, in the home, at the workplace. All right? Young people, maybe even in school, in church. You need to act. You need to act. She needed to help Nabal from being killed. She needed to help the servants from being massacred, the males especially. She was thrown into this situation, all right? She was thrown into this situation. Sometimes we also get thrown into this situation. Not that we want to help, we want to be involved, but we don't have a choice. Now then, the third situation is, look at verse 31. Look at verse 31. Now, something was clearer in Abigail's mind. She said, now this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense unto offense of heart unto my Lord, either that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself. Now, she knew David was going to shed blood causeless and take things into his own hands. David was going to commit sin. He was going to kill innocent blood. Now, so at times, you may see someone going to make a choice that is sinful, blatantly sinful. This was the case of Abigail. She knew that David would wipe out a lineage. Such acts in Israel, not just in Israel, in any situation, would be something abominable to God. Now, she also realized that she must try and stop David from doing that. Well, you may say, well, her skin is in it, right? She don't stop David. Well, she would also suffer. Her husband will be killed. All the males in her house will be wiped out as well. Yeah, she may have that reason. Well, her skin in the situation as well. But she did say, Lord, I have to stop you, right? So sometimes we are thrown into this situation. Now, but let it not be this, all right? I just want to be clear as well. Not it be because, you are a busybody, all right? You love to go around and ask, what's happening in your life? What's happening? Tell me. Because we are busybodies. Because we want to show up people how spiritual, how wise we are, right? Come tell me, I'll help you. I can give you advice. We like to go around giving advice. Now, to some people, they do this, all right? Help others. Because it's an ego trip for themselves. I will have followers after this. They will be indebted to me. I will look so smart, spiritual. I can go around telling people, I don't understand. I had a Christian once walk up to me, right, and said, I don't understand, Reverend Joseph. Lots of people like to ask me advice. And sometimes I get so stressed. One after another, calling me, I want to come to your house, I want to ask you advice and all that. And they feel very good, all right? They like to brag about how people look to them for advice, for help. An ego trip, right? We want people to praise us after that. Be beholden to us after that when the problem is solved. Let it not be that, all right? Now, when we are thrown into some of these legitimate situations where we should step in, we need to step in, what should we do? What should we do? Now, that is why the title today is When Trying to Help Someone. The Christian can sometimes find himself and herself in a situation where either you are asked to help, and you're the best person to help, or you have no choice but to help because calamities are coming to you or to someone else. You have to step in. Then what should you learn to be careful of? Today we just, I think, have time to learn what not, right? What not to do when you're engaged in helping someone, right? God willing, next week we'll learn what to do. But we have to learn what not to do because it begins, she began while needing to help, wanting to help, she began doing something wrong. Just because we do something to help doesn't mean it's always good. Now remember, I promised you we will cover this. Now look at chapter 25. So she realized the situation is dire. She need to help. All right? She need to step in. Help the husband, help the servant. All right? Even help David in this case. Now look at verse 18. And Abigail made haste. She hurried. Haste, okay? Rush. And took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep ready dressed, and 5 measures of parched corn and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on asses. Now God gave a lot of description here, right? Not for fun. She did many things. She gathered many things. She thought of many things together for what? Look at verse 19. And she said unto her servants, go on before me, go ahead of me, all right? This is a dire situation. Hurry, go before me, all right? Don't wait for me. Verse 19, behold, I come after you. I will come as well. Now, then God says, but she told not her husband Nabal. I asked the question the other week. Did she do the right thing to go behind her husband's back and do all this gathering of food? The husband was very clear. He does not want to give food to David and his men. And here God describes the huge amount, the list of food that she put together. All right? Intentionally. Then God says, well, we know that Nabal is unreasonable. He doesn't want to give, but she did this behind his back in disobedience to his very express and clear will which the servants know, she knows, all right? Is this a good B-U-T, but, or is it a bad but? In other words, is it a good but where God says, oh, Nabal did not want to give food, and as a result, a terrible situation is happening, and Nabal cannot be reasoned with. So Abigail did all this, but she didn't tell her husband, all right? But she didn't tell her husband. If she told her husband, he would not have listened, and then she cannot bring the food, and then calamity would happen. So, but she did not tell her husband. She was very wise. Now look at verse 3, please. Verse 3. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife was Abigail. And she was a woman of good, not just understanding, but good understanding, all right? So is this a but that says, you see, but she was a woman of good understanding. After all, God commended her to be of good understanding, right? So, but this act of Abigail in going against the husband's will, a husband who cannot be reasoned with anyway, but because of a good understanding, she saved the day, saved the family. Is this a good but? Or is it, after all this description, she was a wise woman, good understanding, but in this case, she disobeyed her husband. Which one? In design to help the situation, but she was of good understanding and did well, or but she disobeyed her husband. It's something that she should not have done. Which but? Good but or bad but? Is it a warning, or is it an encouragement for us to do that? What do you think? Now, because we are in a situation where we have to help, husbands, you're in a situation, or wives, you're in a situation you need to do something. Should you disobey certain known, express wish, in this case of your husband, wives, and go and do that, but you save the day? What to learn? How to know which is correct? All right? Now, what do you think? Whenever we meet narratives means accounts, stories like that, right? Accounts. When it is not clear, what's the principle? Always turn to the clear precepts and commands in the Bible and interpret the less clear. And narratives are often like that, just telling you the account. Very often it's just that. Epistles are different. Tells you, do this, don't do this. But here, which but? Is this good or bad? What should we learn when we help someone? Always understand that the narrative must be understood in the light of clear commandments and interpreted in the light of known precepts. That's the safest way to know this is a good or a bad but, right? The next time you're in a situation like that, what should you do? Now, you know this verse very well, Ephesians 5:24. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. This is the very clear objectives of God regarding marriage from the beginning, right? This is his institution he instituted marriage. This is his model in marriage. So the clear principle is the wife to be subject, to her own husbands in everything. In everything. Now, not giving food. Now, is that something, a problem? If she didn't do it, could she have saved the day? Now, the clear thing that we can very safely acknowledge is she should not have, because it's obey your husbands in everything. Is this sin? I don't believe so. All right? Because I know your mind is racing, right? Those of you who read the rest of the story. But God killed Nabal later on, right? What is the sin? We will study, all right? But regardless whether this was sin or not, there is one fact that we must be very clear about. She did not need to disobey Nabal in this specific thing about what Nabal did not want to do, give food. You want to argue whether it's sin or not, you can put that aside. Because from this passage, God will reveal very clearly, Abigail did not need to disobey the husband to save the day. Because, I know in our minds, but if she did not, then it will be all finished. Now, we have to ask ourselves, what exactly was the reason why David did not carry on to commit the massacre? What stopped David from doing that? Was it the food? Because once we know that, we don't have to say, when we're in difficulties, when helping, wow, this is a situation that is very serious, It's life and death, right? Pastor, didn't you always say the Bible's principle is preserve life? She was trying to preserve life, correct? Now the question is, was it this disobedience of bringing food that preserved life? Now that is the thing we have to answer. What do you think? You read the passage. Now look at verse 32. What is it that appeased David? What is it that calmed David down? What is it that caused David not to go ahead with his actions? No, sorry, you didn't. All right, verse 32. We didn't read verse 32. All right. Now let's see from David's own mouth. What stopped him? Was it the food that Abigail brought out of disobedience to help? No. And David said to Abigail, "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel," number one. Number two, "we send thee this day to meet me." Verse 33, number three, "and blessed be thy advice. Blessed be thou, which hast kept me this day from coming to shed blood and from avenging myself with mine own hand." Now, David said from his own mouth, he said, well, "Blessed be thou," verse 33, "and blessed be thy gifts." Now, God is very careful to explain when he used "but." Then he explained this, "Blessed be thy advice." God even used David to say this out of his mouth so that it can be recorded. It was not the gift. But he said, but David accepted the gift, right? Then let's see further. Look at verse 35. Look at verse 35. "So David received of her hand that she had brought, of her hand that which she had brought unto him." See, yeah, Pastor, see, it's the gift, right? Now, please read, and God make it very clear. "And said unto her," David said, "Go up in peace." David himself from his own mouth said, "Go up in peace in thine own house. See, I have hearkened unto thy voice and accepted thy gifts." No. "I've hearkened to thy voice," your advice, "and accepted thy person," not thy presence. All right? So from here, you know that the thing that stopped David from his own mouth, that revealed his heart, was not the gifts. Abigail did not need to disobey the husband. Whether you want to say that there is sin or not, it's not the matter. She did not need to disobey the husband. David would have stopped the massacre simply from his own heart. He said it. You don't have to guess, is it the gift or not? God made David say it. Your advice. Your advice. What is this person that he accepted? Why did he accept your gifts? What is it about the person? What about the person? Now, here David did commend Abigail for her good understanding. God will reveal that. It is your person, your being a very wise person that provided very wise advice, that reasoned in a very wise way. Then look at verse 33, "which kept me this day from coming to shed blood." He made it very clear. The reason why he did not shed blood and avenge himself with his own hand was the person, the wisdom, the wise character of Abigail. Now next week when we learn what to do, you will see Abigail was indeed a very wise person of good understanding. How she reasoned, how she counseled advice. David, that was a skill that we have to learn next week. All right? David said, wow, this person, that your understanding was what saved the day, not the gifts. What is it about her? It was her wisdom, her reasoning ability to show David what was really going to happen if he did what he was going to do. Was she commended? Did God commend her for her wisdom? Yes. And so did God use David to do that. But the but was something that in the midst of the wisdom, she failed here. So Christians learn this. When you are in a situation that you need to help, you must remember, the first lesson is, now, do not disobey God in order to help someone. Even if you say, this is needed to save lives, it's not necessary to disobey God in order to save lives. God would never say, oh, in this case, you better disobey me and do this, and I'm commending you, but this is good, right? This is good. The whole thing about the husband is the head of the home, and you're to obey the head of the home, like Christ obeyed the Father in all things, like the church obeyed the Christ in all things. Now follow the same principle. Oh, that one doesn't apply here. We must never think, as we help us, and no matter how dire, how difficult, do not be tempted to disobey God, thinking this will save lives, this is so dire, I need to do this. Never think that way. Please understand, the Old Testament people, they understood covenantal headship. They embrace and accept covenant headship far greater than us today. In fact, it's rejected today. God made it very clear. Learn from Sarah how she honors, reveres the husband. It was something that is so strong in their society and culture. Right? So don't say, maybe Abigail doesn't know. Maybe, only in the New Testament this is revealed. So she didn't know. They know it very well. That's why Sarah was commended. And the New Testament people are taught to learn from Sarah. Now, because we are learning about what not to do, right? I want to deal with this thoroughly. Because I do not want any one of you to say, well, yeah, I still think that maybe she didn't know, right? Maybe she didn't know that Nabal did not want food to be given to David. So maybe she didn't know. So it was not disobeying the husband. In situations like that, no, it should be all right. Now, did she not know? You can argue that. Maybe she didn't know, right? How many of you would think that she didn't know? We read the passage. There are 2 verses here that makes it very clear she knew. She knew that David's people asked for food. She knew that the husband did not want to give food. How do we know that? To be very sure that we should not do this, should not disobey, because, well, she knew. Now, please look at, chapter 25, sorry. Now, look at verse 25. Now, look at verse 25. The second part. Now I say, but I, thine handmaid, saw not the young man of my Lord whom thou didst send. Number one, she knew about this young man. The young man came. She knew. Although she did not see, she knew. But I said, she knew that the young man came. So what? She didn't know the husband didn't want to give food. Well, you go further down. All right? You go further down in verse 27. And now this blessing, these gifts, this food, which thine handmaid have brought unto my Lord, let it even be given unto the young man that follow my Lord. The young man that follow my... Now he knew that this group of people that came to ask for food, this group of people is with him. She knew that there were young men who came. There were young men who came specifically to ask for gifts. And said, now these are the gifts for those young men. Your men that you sent came to ask for gifts. Now, I give these gifts. Let them carry it back. She knew, with all this collection, the food was something that Nabal did not want to give. Now you say, then Pastor, it is finished, right? You say, obey all things, right? Then this case will be finished. They will die. Number one, we already said, David, from his own mouth, said, I did not carry on with my my intention to massacre because of your person, your wisdom, your advice, okay? Not the presence. Now, the other thing is, they say, but Pastor, how would the situation be stopped? How would this situation be stopped? We'll see afterwards, all right, what not to do. Now, here, so that is the first thing we must learn. Never, please, never think that disobeying God, or maybe I should put it this way, never think that two wrongs will make one right when you help people. Because sometimes that is our temptation. And we look at the situation, we say, you know, the situation is so bad in this person's family, you know. You don't understand this wife's situation. You don't understand this husband's situation. You don't understand this child's situation. You don't understand the situation of the Christian. Now, we have that tendency of that way of thinking when we help others. And then we even get angry at people who say, no, you cannot do that. Maybe you're sitting there and getting angry at me now. No, you shouldn't do that. You know, you don't understand. You're not loving. God used the word but. And we know that but is proven not a good but. If you think that God thinks that, well, in dire situation, be understanding to Abigail. Any worse situation than Abigail, can you think of it? Even in your own life? But God says, but this was her problem. Do not advise and help people with this concept. It's so bad, you don't understand. This is an exception that you can disobey God. If not, who's going to feed the family? Who's going to feed the children? Who's going to feed the parent? There's no end to it. Now, actually, I want to draw immediately the follow-up lesson from this, all right? Do not misinterpret scriptures. Do not misinterpret scriptures to support what you want to do yourself or what you advise others. You misinterpret scriptures and you use it to advise others. Be very careful. Now, that is why earlier on I said, don't be a busybody, all right? When we use this and say, oh, her wisdom was she stopped the massacre, although she disobeyed her husband. In fact, disobedience of the husband was what saved the day. You misinterpret scriptures without reading the rest. Because that is the best feeling in you, right? You help the situation, and exceptions are fine. Now you will open a floodgate. I want to say this again. Do not do this because you will open a floodgate for yourself and for Christians to disobey God when we advise them to disobey God as long as the situation gets better. Now we studied this topic once on situational ethics, right? The Christian should never practice situational ethics. The moment you use scriptures wrongly or you want to use scriptures to say what you want to believe and do, you will lead yourself and others to situational ethics. In this situation, come on, please understand, Pastor. Look at the family situation. Why do you keep insisting? Why do you keep harping on, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this? You're not in their situation. You don't understand. You open the floodgate. Now, where is the line that you draw? Where beyond this line, well, we can disobey God. Where is the line? Christian, we should never ask the question, where is the line? There is no such line. There is no such line that can exist. There is a situation where we can cross that line and disobey God, or when lives are at stake, there is no such line. God simply says, but. I give you an example. Today, many Christians, even pastors, use scriptures to justify in their counseling, in their helping others, to say that it is okay to lie. In certain situations where lives are at stake, it is okay to lie. And they use scriptures, misinterpreting it or wanting it to say what they want to say, And you know the case, right? Today, this case is often used in books, on pulpits, to say it is in certain situations, it is okay for the Christian to lie. And the situation is Rahab. Rahab, isn't it true? They say, you see, Rahab lied. And therefore, the soldiers did not get killed. And then as a result, good turnout, right? Now, not only that, they quote scriptures to say God commended Rahab. James 2:25 to 26. Let me read to you. James 2:25 to 26. Likewise also was not Rahab, the harlot, justified by works. Oh, you see, she lied and saved the soldiers. God says, this harlot was justified by works. She was commended for what she did. When she had received the messengers and sent them another way, for as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is also dead. Now, here, if you want to interpret Rahab's lie being commended by God, because lives were at stake, Israel's mission was at stake, then in those situations, it's okay, and God will even commend Rahab. Now, then you are sorely mistaken, because please read carefully. Her works, what was her works? When she received the messengers. Number one, she received the messengers. Number two, and she lied. No, and she sent them another way. Nothing to do with her lies. The point about verse 24, as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. God is saying this. I am commending Rahab's work, her works that proved her genuine faith. Listen carefully, yeah? God said, I am commending Rahab for her works that proved her genuine faith. Now, if you say that lying was what God was commending, then let me rephrase the Bible for you. God was commending Rahab for lying to prove her genuine faith. By all counts, in doctrines, theology, known precepts, you know it sounds very wrong. God commends Rahab for her lying, which is a proof of her faith. God was commending Rahab for her receiving the messengers. Means she was not afraid. She believed so much in this Jehovah whom she haven't even seen the miracles in Egypt. She only heard about it and she believed. And she would receive. That is her faith. She sent them another way. God did not say she lied and saved them. She sent them another way. Means she simply made sure that they went on another way and they could escape by hiding them, not by lying. Now, when you do not read scriptures carefully, now the Bible says all liars shall have their part in the lake of fire. God has a special hatred for lying. Do you know why? Do you know why? The first lie told in this universe is by Satan. And God says, when you tell lies, you act like your father, the liar. He's the origin of lies. He's the first liar. It's a hateful thing. His lie caused all of us to become sinners. His lie caused Christ to need to come and suffer and die. God hates lies. And then if we do not, now, so you open a floodgate. Where's the line for lying? Because anyone can interpret, if I don't lie, if I don't disobey God, I don't disobey my husband, my parents, then there's no food. So that is the line for someone. I can't get a job. There's a line for another person. It's life and death. What is life and death? So Christian, when you want to help someone, be absolutely clear. It's black and white. Do not disobey God to do something. Now, then we come to the next part, all right? Let me see. Oh, so I want to say this. God is not commending Abigail for her disobedience of what she knows God expects in marriage, and which result in saving people. Just like God was not commending Rahab for disobeying scriptures about lying, and as a result, people got saved. This is how you must read scriptures. Husbands, don't try to protect your wife when she lies, all right? By saying in this situation, it is fine. She was just trying to help me. She loves me so much, and so on, all right? Don't encourage anyone in your home to do that. Now, when we come now to so if the first one, learn never to disobey God, no matter what, in any situation, when you help people to do something in disobedience to God. Now, the second one is, let's turn to 1 Samuel chapter 25. 1 Samuel chapter 25. Now, look at verse 18. Sorry, verse 19. And she said unto her servants, go on before me. Behold, I come after you. Go on before me. She collected all the food. Many servants are needed to carry it, so you go first, all right? You'll be slower than me. Go first. She needed to save all the males in the house. She needed to help them, all right? She knew that David was coming to kill them. Evil is intended against Nabal and the household. So we talk about helping Nabal. Now we talk about saving the lives of the servants. She said, now you go. Now, then you begin to realize, what was she teaching them? What was she teaching them? She was teaching them to disobey the master. Because it's very clear, she knew what the servants came for. We saw that earlier on in, I think, verse 25 and 27. She knew the servants came for food and said, now take this food and give it to your servants. She knew David sent servants to take food. And the servants themselves are very clear that the master did not want to give food, correct? But yet she told the servants, see all the food I've gathered? Hurry, go first. It will slow you down, so you go first. Teaching them to disobey the master. Helping someone, but by teaching them to do what is wrong. Not only yourself doing what is wrong, but teaching them to do what is wrong. Now, what is the principle? How do we know it is wrong? We studied in great detail 1 Peter. Let me read to you 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 18 to 19. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward, which is Nabal. God says, even if he is a Nabal, be subject, means obey your masters. How? With fear. No, all fear. Under no circumstance, unless it's sin, under no circumstance must you disobey your master, even if he's like Nabal. Scriptures are very clear. In those days, they are very clear about these things. Please don't think this is just New Testament, all right? In fact, Paul was saying all these things, citing Old Testament's concepts. Now, Scriptures have many things to say about from the Old Testament in the civil law about how servants are to honor, respect, obey their masters in all things. Please turn to chapter 25 of 1 Samuel and look at verse 10. Look at verse 10. Here is Nabal speaking. Nabal, all right, the fool. Now he says, where there be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. I read to you again. There be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. Even the fool Nabal knows that in his days, these are how servants like. They are disobedient. They do not obey. They do whatever they want. They break away. They won't follow or obey commands of the master. He says, servants are like that these days. Here is a fool who says that. Even the fool understands that servants should not be like that. Of course, he was falsely accusing David. But here is Abigail, the wise woman of good understanding, teaching the servants to be like the servants, the bad servants of those days, which even his foolish husband thinks should not be. This but This but is God's way of saying she had good understanding, but in these two areas, she was foolish. She was foolish. Even Nabal understood that. Servants should not break away from their masters, no matter what. So here, when we help others, please do not give advice without making sure, very sure, from scriptures. Not only that, well, the situation is difficult, you cannot understand. In this situation, please, it's exception. Not only don't do that, don't go and tell someone, it is all right to do this, just go. This will help your family, this is needed. Ignore what people tell you. Other Christians are just not loving, just do it. Don't tell people to do something unless you're absolutely sure it is not sin. These things about obedience to the headship, these things about servants obeying the masters are well clear. They have more civil laws covering that than today we have in the New Testament, just 1 or 2 verses about it. 2 wrongs don't make 1 right. We heard it from David's mouth. It was not the food. It was the advice. We heard it from David's mouth. So we do not need to say that, well, if they did not bring the food, if she did not disobey the husband and taught the servants to disobey the husband, they would have been killed. They would not have been killed. From David's own mouth, why he did not kill them. Now, back to lessons for ourselves. Advise very carefully because God will hold you accountable. God said, but she told the servants to do this. But she told the servants to do this. Yes, she was trying to help save their lives. But she taught them to do something wrong. Christian, again, 2 wrongs don't make 1 right. Don't have an ego trip, right? Just say whatever. You see, you say something, this is a straightforward solution that will solve the problem. Ask, this advice that I'm telling this person, is it causing the person to sin? You better ask carefully. You will be held accountable. Don't be so happy and excited and egoistic when people turn to you for help. It is a very, very heavy responsibility. Some people love to go around asking, what about this, what about that? I want to help. They don't understand. Information is severe responsibility. She got the information, but she didn't think. Look at chapter 25. Look at verse 18. And Abigail made haste. She rushed without thinking. What am I saying? What have I just done? James 3:1. Let me read to you. James 3:1. My brethren, a very tender, loving, a very concerned advice from James. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. Be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. Masters means teachers, all right? Advisors, counselors. Don't be so excited to go around and being an advisor to someone, counseling someone, helping someone, because there comes great accountability. The more you do that, if you're not careful, the more you will sin, and therefore, God says you shall receive the greater condemnation. Now, I'm not saying do not help. Anyway, in some situation like Abigail, she have no choice but to act. She's thrown in that. But be not many masters means don't go around and want to do that. I say again, I'm not seeing people turn to, hey, be not many masters, please go and ask. Yeah, don't ask me. Think very carefully. You better know God's word. Don't be moved by emotion. In this situation, it's dire. Don't think that this is what other people do and then it works and then so this is it. If you're not sure, turn them to people who are trained in the word, ministers. Turn them to the pastor. Turn them to men who are steeped in the word, the elders. Turn them to the board, right? Don't be so excited to tell you what, do this, all right? Go do this, Then after that, the situation is safe, and you thought you did the right thing. God says, but she turned people to commit sin while she was trying to save them. All right? So this is highly possible. Don't take this lightly. Ask yourself, what am I telling them? What am I telling them? All right? Now, I'll say more about some of this next week, but one of the things is this. Don't think that just because it worked for you, then it is right. Well, we see next week about counseling, helping others. Never use situations that has worked before. Maybe she has disobeyed the husband before. Maybe she has taught the servants to disobey before, and nothing happened, and in fact good happened. And then she learns from that. And then now she says, servant, just go ahead, do it. Don't worry. Just go. Hurry up, go, and I will come with you. Yeah? I'm so sure that this is fine. Do not use your own experience. All right? Now, then we draw a follow-up lesson from this. A follow-up lesson from this. What is it? Now, listen, the first one, all right, we learn from scriptures. 2 wrongs don't make one right. So don't disobey God in order to help someone, right? Then from there, the follow-up lesson we learned was what? That we should never practice situational ethics. Do not misinterpret scriptures. You want to use scriptures as your basis. You want to use this as your basis to say it's okay for wives to disobey the husband in certain situation. You better not misinterpret scriptures. Now we learn this second thing, right? Don't teach others, no matter what the situation is, to do what in your eyes you see is the only way to save the situation. So even if it is wrong, just do it, all right? It's saving lives. Don't teach people to sin in any situation. What should we learn from here? When we need to help people, have to help people, called to help people. Well, when you advise people, give them instructions. Now, never be faithless. Never be faithless that obedience to God at any cost, at any situation. The first one was misinterpret scriptures, right? Now it's you know. You know what is right and wrong. Never fear yourself. Because if you fear yourself, no, if I tell this person, do this. If Abigail said, if I tell the people, well, don't, well, there's nothing we can do, then we're all going to die. Fear. Fear will cause you to tell people to do something that is sinful. Fear. You must have faith when you give advice. This is what God says, then just do this. Not based on situation, has nothing to do, just obey. Not only that, clear instructions, don't do this. Now I've said many times in scriptures, you saw it again and again. David was very clear. It was not the gifts. It was the person, the advice. He specifically mentioned those things. The advice and the wisdom, the character, the person. That was what stopped him. Now, in other words, it means this. And we said that. Did Abigail need to disobey the husband in order to save the people, the servants as well, besides her own husband? David said no, all right, from David's mouth, no. Now then the lesson is this, dear friends. You ask, Pastor, so when I'm in difficult situation, people ask for advice, right? I need to do something, right? My family's lives are at risk. Their lives are at risk. Someone's going to do something very sinful. I need to intervene, right? With a genuine sincerity and a need. I need to intervene. So, Pastor, are you telling me don't do anything? Don't do anything, right? So you're saying, so Abigail should not have done anything? No, that is human responsibility. Please pay attention. What is it that Nabal did not want to be done, to have done? Give food, correct? But was Nabal against his people interacting with David's people? No. How do we know that? Look at verse 1. Look at verse 8. Verse 8. Ask thy young men, and they will show thee. Wherefore let the young men find favor in the eyes. Right? Ask the young men, and they will show you. So, David's men told Nabal very clearly, your servants know. Your servants know us. Your servants interact with us. Your servants know what we have done. Ask them. Did Nabal say, why, you servants, you mean you've been talking to David's people? No, he did not. He was not angry that his servants interacted with David's people. He just didn't want to give food. He was not against them meeting David's people. In fact, now, if you say maybe that is your interpretation, now go further down. Go further down. Look at verse 15. But, now this is the servant speaking. But the men were very good unto us, and we were not hurt, neither missed we anything, as long as we were conversant with them when we were in the fields. As long as we were conversant with them when we were in the fields. The servants themselves have been interacting with. This word conversant is not only just about they converse with them. Yes, they walk and live side by side, alongside each other. Nabal did not rail and rant and blow up, knowing that. The servants all these years interacted. Nabal never said, hey, what you guys doing talking to this stranger? Now, what am I trying to get at? Abigail meeting. Look at verse 21. 22. I'm so sorry. Verse 23. And when Abigail saw David, she hasted and lighted off the ass and fell before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground. Her meeting David was not something, if she did, was in disobedience to the husband. You ask me, so she don't need to do anything? You know, you are just an unreasonable helper. This cannot, that cannot. Right? Every situation, it must be black and white. God used the word but. Yes, it's black and white. The Bible is always black and white when it comes to sin or not sin. Or then don't do anything. Sometimes people act like that. Sometimes you preach something, and then they will just say to your face, oh, so you're telling us eat what? What do you want us to eat at home? Have this kind of attitude. As if the only way is to sin. Abigail, going to meet David, giving the advice was what stopped David. Abigail did not need to disobey the husband's instruction not to give food. She did not need to disobey that. The day would still be saved. Because we are faithless. We always think this way. When we advise someone, when we see a situation for ourselves or for others, we always have this idea. Then what do you expect? Us to die? Not have enough food at home? If you don't have dual income? If you don't have this and that, what do you expect us to live on? You see, it's that kind of thinking. And this is the danger. When you advise someone, or when you get married, don't need to have children. Don't need, right? Because I understand your situation is very difficult. Although God says, He seek godly seed. That's the purpose He made very clear for marriage. But you think you are wiser in their situation. They don't need to have, right? We advise people to do sinful things because we are faithless. In their case, if they have, there'll be big problem. In their case, if they did this, big problem. In their case, if they obey God in this, then they cannot feed the family and the parents. Do not advise people like that. God will say, but to you. God will say, greater is the judgment when you want to give advice that are wrong. Take it very seriously. Now, back to the last one. Back to Rahab, right? Why do people keep interpreting that in Rahab's case, it was lie that saved the day? Because they don't have faith. The commendation that was given was about faith. That was the whole problem. But in their eyes, if Rahab did not lie, if they say, are they here? Did you hide them? And if Rahab did not lie, what's going to happen? They will uncover and then they will kill the early party, right? The Rakis. They will kill them, right? So of course you have to, right? Why do they interpret scriptures like that? Why did God choose to talk about faith when it comes to Rahab? It's also a reminder to us. Now, could not the situation be, where are they? Well, I cannot lie, right? I hid them under the covers, all right? There are so many permutations that God can deliver. All right, open, you are here, capture you, tie you up, walk you out, and walk halfway. The two person can die of heart attack. Can God not intervene? The two person can escape by themselves out of the grip, the grasp of these people. There are so many permutations that when we obey God by faith and tell people, just obey God. There are so many ways that our almighty, sovereign, infinitely powerful, and wise God can work through without us sinning, without us giving the advice, don't need to do this. Just sin. There are so many ways that God can intervene. There's so many ways that God can intervene to help the family, to help the couple, to help you as a single. All right? So many ways. But you know you're single, right? Yeah, in single situation is different, right? Don't worry, just do it, just do it. Right? God will understand. If God will understand, why would God say but? Why would God say but? God will understand? No. God wants us to have faith. That's what it is. Do not give advice lightly, just by situation, just by fear. There are so many situations here in David's case. In fact, God made this explicitly clear. David said it's not the food. Yes, he took it. But after he took it, he thanked her for her character, for her wisdom. And he specifically used the word advice. I know I'm saying this to death, but I want to drum it in from scriptures. We do not need to teach people to do wrong things because we are fearful. You are fearful, don't give advice. Don't help. Ask someone else to help. All right? Now, I hope that we learn some of the not to do. And do not use passages like that to justify, all right, any sin. In this situation, save life, so it is good. God says, didn't have to disobey. Didn't have to. Going to see, David was not disobedience to the husband at all. There was that option, right? Now, God willing, next week, then we learn how to advise correctly. We will learn a lot from this lady. Now, let us rise to sing the closing hymn, 434. Shall we rise? 4, 3, 4.